Do you believe that even after someone is gone, love can still remain? Hi, good evening. My name is Lily. I was only 5 years old when I met my best friend, a chubby, blue-eyed orange cat named Pilo. This is our story. Studio microphone opening narration, plus or minus 30 to 40 seconds. Lily's voice in a memory, full of nostalgia, like reading a bedtime storybook. I remember the night I found him. It was raining hard, the sky sounded angry, and everything was wet and cold. But under the broken bench, I saw him, Pilo. He was small, round, soaked, and so sad. I carried him home, wrapped him in a towel, and from that night on, we were inseparable. We played, laughed, and dreamed together. He wasn't just a cat. He was my best friend forever. But then, something happened. I started to grow weaker, slow down, and Pilo never left me. This story isn't just about me, it's about how love never really goes away, even when people do. It was one of those evenings when the sky decided to throw a tantrum. The rain wasn't just falling, it was practically attacking the ground like it had a personal grudge. The trees outside bent left and right as if they were auditioning for some weird dance competition, and puddles started forming faster than kids could jump into them. Most people would stay inside, cozy with a blanket, hot cocoa in hand. But not Lily. Lily was 5 years old, which basically meant two things. 1, she thought she was invincible, and 2, she had absolutely no concept of bad weather. For her, rain wasn't a nuisance, it was free entertainment. With her tiny yellow raincoat that made her look like a walking lemon, and rubber boots 2 sizes too big, she stomped out into the backyard. Each step created a splash so dramatic you'd think she was filming a commercial for laundry detergent. And then, just as she was about to jump into the mother of all puddles, the kind that looked like it might actually swallow her boots, she heard it. Meow. At first, Lily thought it was her imagination. Maybe the puddle itself had learned how to talk, which, let's face it, would have been awesome. But then she heard it again. A tiny, desperate, squeaky kind of meow, the kind that immediately made you think, okay, whoever that is, they need help. Or at least a sandwich. Lily turned around, scanning the garden, and that's when she saw him. Huddled under the broken wooden bench, soaked from ears to tail, was a ball of orange fluff. Well, okay, not so much a ball as a soggy mop that once dreamed of being fluffy. His fur was plastered against his chubby little body, his whiskers drooped like wet spaghetti, and his big blue eyes stared out at the world with the kind of hopelessness usually reserved for people waiting in line at the DMV. Oh no, Lily gasped. You're drowning in the air. Of course, the cat wasn't technically drowning. Cats are annoyingly good at being dramatic even when they're just damp. But in Lily's mind, this was an emergency. She rushed over, ignoring the puddles and the rain dripping into her eyes. She crouched down and reached out her little hand. The cat blinked at her, suspicious. You could practically see the thoughts running through his mind. Do I trust this tiny human tornado? Or do I die tragically as the soggy loner no one remembers? But before he could overthink it, because cats, contrary to popular belief, are expert overthinkers, Lily scooped him up. And here's the thing, this cat was not exactly travel size. He was plump. Delightfully plump. The kind of cat you look at and say, yep, that guy's been stealing snacks from someone's kitchen. His belly spilled out of Lily's small arms as she struggled to carry him inside, wobbling like a penguin with a secret mission. She burst through the back door, soaking wet, carrying what looked like an overstuffed pumpkin with legs. Mom! Dad! I found him. He was gonna melt outside like ice cream. Her parents, who were in the middle of drinking coffee and wondering if 5-year-olds ever ran out of energy, spoiler, they don't, turned to see their daughter cradling the world's chubbiest orange cat. "Sweetie," her mom said cautiously, "that's a cat." Yeah," Lily replied, rolling her eyes like only a 5-year-old can, as if her mom had just announced that water is wet. "But he's my cat now. His name is Pilo." And just like that, Pilo had a name. Her dad squinted at the cat. "Pilo? Why Pilo?" "Because he's soft like a pillow," Lily declared proudly. "But cooler. And pillows don't have blue eyes. Duh. Now, let me paint you a picture." Pilo sat on the kitchen floor, dripping rainwater all over the tiles, his belly spreading outward like it had its own zip code. His blue eyes blinked slowly at Lily, as if to say, "Kid, you better have snacks, or this isn't going to work." Lily, of course, didn't care about the skeptical look. To her, it was love at first sight. She grabbed a towel. Well, technically it was her dad's favorite towel, but hey, sacrifices must be made, wrapped it around Pilo, and began drying him with all the gentleness of a child trying not to break her new favorite toy. Pilo purred loudly. It wasn't a normal purr either, it sounded like someone had started up a motorcycle in the kitchen. Her mom sighed. "Well, I guess he's staying." Lily grinned ear to ear, clutching her new best friend. "Of course he's staying. He's my forever buddy." And so it began, the story of Lily and her plump, orange, blue-eyed Pilo. A story that would bring laughter, warmth, and, eventually, a whole lot of tears. But for now, it was enough that Lily had found her soggy, sarcastic-looking soulmate on that stormy night. Because sometimes, the best friendships don't begin with fireworks or trumpets. Sometimes they begin with rain, a pair of oversized boots, and a chubby cat who really, really hates being wet. If you thought Pilo's first night in Lily's house was dramatic, wet fur, questionable smells, and a suspiciously loud purr that could probably set off a car alarm, then you clearly haven't seen what came next. Because once a 5-year-old decides a chubby orange cat is her forever buddy, you might as well sign up for chaos. And snacks. Lots of snacks. By the next morning, Pilo had fully claimed the house. You know how some cats take time to adjust? Hide under the couch. Get all mysterious and aloof? Not Pilo. Nope. This guy walked around like he was the landlord. His blue eyes scanned every corner of the living room as if he were making a mental list of all the furniture he was going to shed on. He jumped onto the couch with the grace of, well, a bowling ball with whiskers, and plopped himself right in the middle like he was posing for a Renaissance painting. Lily, of course, followed him everywhere. Imagine a tiny detective in pajamas, holding a half-eaten cookie, whispering things like, "Don't worry, Pilo, I'll protect you." Protect him from what? No one knew. But Pilo didn't argue. He just blinked at her like, "Yeah, sure, kid, keep the snacks coming and we'll be fine." Every day became a routine. Morning. Lily would sneak pieces of her cereal to Pilo. Her mom would say, "Sweetie, don't feed the cat people food," and Lily would nod innocently, while very obviously slipping another piece of cereal under the table. Pilo's belly was living its best life. Afternoons. That was playtime in the backyard. Lily would run around with a jump rope, pretending it was a magic lasso, while Pilo sat nearby, rolling on his back like an orange croissant. Occasionally, he'd chase after a butterfly, but let's be honest, Pilo was not exactly Olympic material. After 3 steps, he'd flop back down dramatically, as if to say, "Wow, cardio is overrated." But here's the thing, Lily didn't care that Pilo wasn't fast or graceful. To her, he was perfect. She would pick dandelions and tuck them gently into his fur, whispering, "Now you're a prince." And Pilo, probably embarrassed beyond words, would just sit there with flowers sticking out of his belly fluff, looking like the world's chubbiest bouquet. And nights? Oh, nights were sacred. Every evening, Lily would crawl into her bed, a bed covered with blankets that had seen way too many juice spills, and Pilo would hop up after her. He wasn't much of a jumper, again, too much belly, not enough spring, so sometimes he'd miss on the first try. But eventually, he'd land next to her, curl into a giant orange ball, and start that thunder purr again. Lily would wrap her tiny arm around him like he was her teddy bear, and together they'd drift off to sleep. Now, let's pause for a second. If you've never slept next to a cat, you might imagine it's peaceful and cozy. And sure, it is, for about 3 minutes. Then reality sets in. Cats snore. Yes, they do. And Pilo? He didn't just snore, he wheezed like a broken accordion. Half the time it sounded like someone was trying to start a rusty lawnmower right there in Lily's bed. But Lily? She didn't care. To her, that sound was comfort. She'd press her cheek against his warm fur and smile in her sleep. And that's how the days went by, simple, messy, and filled with love. One sunny Saturday, Lily decided she and Pilo were going on an adventure. Which basically meant she put a doll's hat on Pilo's head and announced that he was now Captain Pilo, explorer of the backyard. Did Pilo look thrilled? Absolutely not. His face screamed, "Kid, I didn't sign up for cosplay." But he tolerated it, because honestly, what else was he going to do? Together they wandered the backyard, Lily with her plastic magnifying glass, Pilo waddling behind her like a bodyguard who got paid in kibble. She pretended the garden hose was a river they had to cross, and Pilo, reluctantly, jumped over it, landing with all the grace of a sack of potatoes. Lily clapped like he had just won gold at the Olympics. Good job, Pilo. You're the bravest cat ever. And Pilo, panting dramatically after his 3-foot leap, gave her a look that said, "Bravest? Kid, I almost pulled a muscle." But here's the truth, he was brave. Not in the sword-fighting, dragon-slaying kind of way. But in the way that mattered to Lily. Brave enough to let her love him. Brave enough to stay by her side, no matter what ridiculous adventure she invented that day. Every corner of the house, every inch of the backyard, became theirs. Where Lily went, Pilo followed. And where Pilo flopped down to nap, Lily sat beside him, humming songs only she knew. And so, in those golden days, the world seemed simple. Rain or shine, laughter or silence, it was always Lily and Pilo, two souls tangled together in a friendship so pure it almost made you forget that one of them was basically a walking loaf of bread with fur. But as every grown-up knows, and kids don't, the happiest days always feel endless, right until they're not. For now, though, Lily and Pilo lived in their little bubble of joy. And if you had peeked into their world, you'd see nothing but a little girl with a cookie crumb smile and her orange, blue-eyed, snoring best friend, fast asleep, side by side, dreaming the same dream. Life with Lily and Pilo had settled into a rhythm, a sweet, goofy, slightly chaotic rhythm that only a 5-year-old girl and an overweight orange cat could create. Every morning meant spilled cereal, every afternoon meant adventures in the backyard jungle, aka the patch of grass with 3 dandelions, and every night meant falling asleep to the sound of Pilo's purring lawnmower routine. But then, little by little, things started to shift. It was small at first. Lily, who usually had the energy of 3 squirrels on espresso, started getting tired. And not, "I've been running in circles for an hour and now I need apple juice," tired, more like, "I walked across the room and now I need a nap," tired. Which, to be fair, sounds like adulthood, but trust me, for a 5-year-old, that's not normal. One afternoon, Lily was playing with her jump rope in the yard. Usually, she'd be chanting, skipping, and tripping over her boots in a glorious display of chaos. But that day, after just a few jumps, she sat down on the grass, panting. Pilo, who had been sprawled nearby in his usual loaf of bread position, tilted his head. If cats could raise their eyebrows, Pilo was definitely raising both. "You tired already?" Lily's mom called from the porch, trying not to sound concerned but already wringing her hands like every mom does when something feels off. Lily shrugged, brushing dirt from her knees. "I guess my legs don't feel like jumping today." Pilo waddled over, plopping himself down next to her with a grunt that sounded suspiciously judgmental. He rested his big orange belly against her little leg, staring at her as if to say, "Really, kid? I flop around and do nothing all day. That's my job. You're supposed to be the hyper one." But Lily just leaned against him, resting her head on his soft fur. "I'll be fine. Right, Pilo?" And Pilo purred. Loudly. The kind of purr that was less comforting and more, "Is there a motorcycle starting up in this backyard?" But Lily smiled anyway. The next few days were the same. Less jumping, less running, more sitting. Sometimes Lily would cough, small at first, then louder, the kind of cough that made her mom and dad exchange those silent, worried glances, the ones kids never notice, but pets always do. One evening, after dinner, Lily was drawing at the kitchen table. Usually, her art consisted of rainbows, stick figures, and the occasional, abstract masterpiece that looked suspiciously like spaghetti. But halfway through her rainbow, she dropped her crayon and rested her chin on her hand. "I'm tired," she muttered. Her dad frowned. "But it's only 6 o'clock. "Yeah," Lily said, yawning. "But my eyes are sleepy." And right then, as if on cue, Pilo leapt onto the table. Yes, the cat who normally couldn't be bothered to jump onto anything higher than the couch somehow launched his plump body onto the table like it was the Olympic high jump. He sat squarely on Lily's unfinished drawing, his tail swishing, his blue eyes locked on her face. "Pilo doesn't want me to be tired," Lily giggled weakly, stroking his ear. But her parents weren't laughing. Not really. The very next day, they took her to the doctor. Lily didn't mind. She thought hospitals were just giant playgrounds where everyone wore matching costumes. She proudly announced to the nurse, "This is my cat, Pilo. He's orange, fat, and he snores louder than my dad." The nurse laughed politely. Pilo, sitting in his carrier with his belly squished against the bars, gave her a look like, "Lady, you don't even know the half of it." Tests were run. More visits followed. Lily didn't understand why everyone looked so serious, but she noticed how her parents held hands tighter in the waiting room. And she noticed how Pilo always stayed close, curling around her feet whenever she felt too tired to move. One night, as she lay in bed, Lily whispered into Pilo's fur, "I don't know why I feel like this. But I'm glad you're here." Pilo purred so hard the bed shook. Which, honestly, wasn't that unusual, but that night, it meant more. It was his way of saying, "I don't get it either, kid. But I'm not going anywhere." And so the days of endless jumping and running slowly faded, replaced by quieter afternoons, softer moments, and a bond that grew stronger with every cough, every sigh, and every nap they took side by side. Because sometimes friendship isn't about running in the sunshine. Sometimes it's about sitting quietly in the shadows, together. If you've ever seen a kid sick, you know it's unsettling. One day they're bouncing off the walls like caffeinated squirrels, and the next day they're curled up on the couch, refusing even the magic cure-all of chicken nuggets. For Lily, the change was slow but undeniable. The jump ropes gathered dust in the corner. Her rain boots, those oversized, splash-happy boots, sat unused by the door. Even her crayons, once scattered like confetti across the living room, stayed neatly in their box. If you've ever lived with a 5-year-old, you know, crayons staying inside the box is practically a medical emergency. And through it all, there was Pilo. Our orange, blue-eyed, loaf-shaped hero took on his new role with surprising dedication. Gone were the days of half-hearted butterfly chases or pretending to be Captain Explorer with a doll hat jammed on his head. Now, Pilo's full-time job was professional bedside companion. Lily's parents would tuck her in after a coughing fit, and without fail, Pilo would leap onto the bed. Well, leap might be generous, more like heaved himself up with the determination of a very fluffy bowling ball. He'd curl right next to her, pressing his round belly against her side as if to remind her, "Hey, kid, I've got warmth, and I've got purrs. That's the best I can do." Lily would stroke his fur with small, weak hands. Sometimes her voice was barely above a whisper, but she always managed to smile. "You're my bestest friend, Pilo." And Pilo would answer with that signature purr, loud enough to rattle the window. If you didn't know better, you might have thought the house was haunted by a very content motorcycle. Her parents watched from the doorway, torn between heartbreak and gratitude. Heartbreak, because their little girl was fading. Gratitude, because somehow, this chubby orange cat seemed to be holding her together in ways medicine couldn't. Days blurred into nights. The once lively house became quiet, almost reverent. No more dandelion crowns in the backyard. No more crayon masterpieces taped proudly to the fridge. Just Lily, Pilo, and the soft hum of love between them. One afternoon, Lily had enough strength to sit up in bed. She tugged gently at Pilo's ear, her blue eyes, still bright, though tired, locking onto his. "Pilo," she whispered, "if I get too sleepy one day and don't wake up right away, you have to promise me something." Pilo blinked at her, his eyes wide, his expression somewhere between concern and "Kid, you're 5, why are you suddenly talking like a soap opera character?" "You have to be strong," she continued. "Even if I'm not here. You have to still purr really loud, okay?" Now, obviously, Pilo didn't understand every word. He was a cat, after all, not a Hallmark movie co-star. But he understood her tone. He understood the way her little fingers clung to his fur, the way her voice trembled but her eyes begged him to agree. And so, he pressed his round head against her cheek and purred harder than ever before. The kind of purr that said, "Fine, kid. Deal. But only because you asked." That night, Lily's coughs kept her awake. Her mom sat by her side, stroking her hair, while her dad paced the hallway like a soldier waiting for bad news. And Pilo? He refused to move from the bed. He wedged himself against Lily's chest, purring non-stop, as if his rumbling could drown out the sound of sickness itself. And for a moment, just a fleeting, fragile moment, it worked. Lily smiled through the coughing, resting her tiny hand on his fluffy belly. "You're the bestest," she whispered again. And Pilo, loyal and stubborn as ever, stayed there, guardian, friend, and the world's chunkiest comfort blanket. Because when the world outside seemed too heavy, too unfair, too cruel, sometimes all a little girl needs is a cat with a belly big enough to hold all her worries. There are some nights that just feel different. You know the ones, when the air is too quiet, the clock ticks a little too loud, and the shadows in the room seem to hold their breath. That was one of those nights for Lily. She was weaker now. Even her favorite blanket, the one covered in juice stains and cookie crumbs that she had declared royal princess fabric, felt too heavy for her tiny frame. Her parents moved quietly around the room, speaking in whispers that were supposed to be comforting but sounded suspiciously like panic disguised as calm. And Pilo? Well, Pilo wasn't going anywhere. The orange loaf had planted himself on the bed like a stubborn pumpkin that refused to roll away. His belly pressed against Lily's side, his big blue eyes blinking slowly, as if trying to memorize every single detail of her face. Lily coughed softly and reached out her fragile hand. Her fingers sank into Pilo's fur, now warm and slightly messy from hours of constant cuddling. "Hey, Pilo," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet it almost blended with the ticking clock. Pilo flicked his ear and tilted his head, his expression somewhere between, "Yes, tiny human? And please let this involve snacks. You're my bestest friend." Pilo purred in response, because words weren't his thing. But the rumbling was steady, deep, almost vibrating the bed frame. "If purrs could talk," he said, obviously. "Who else lets you put flowers in their fur and calls it fashion?" Lily giggled weakly, but her smile faded quickly. Her little chest rose and fell with effort, and her eyelids fluttered as if they weighed 100 pounds. She leaned closer to Pilo, pressing her forehead against his. "I might get too sleepy soon. Maybe I won't wake up." Now, here's the thing about cats, they're not philosophers. They don't ponder the mysteries of life or the tragedy of saying goodbye. But somehow, in that moment, Pilo seemed to understand. His blue eyes widened, and he pressed his nose against her cheek. His purrs grew louder, almost desperate. "Promise me something," Lily whispered. "Promise you'll stay strong. Even if I'm not here. You have to purr for me. Loud, so I can hear it, wherever I go." Pilo butted his head against her hand, as if to say, "Kid, I'll purr so loud they'll hear me in space." Lily's smile returned, faint but genuine. "Good, that's good." Her parents watched silently from the doorway, tears streaming down their faces. They wanted to rush in, to scoop her up, to beg her to stay. But they couldn't. This was Lily's moment, with her chubby, orange, blue-eyed guardian. The night stretched on. Lily's breathing grew slower, softer. She whispered one last time, her words barely audible. "Bestest, friend." And then she closed her eyes. The room was silent. Painfully silent. Except for Pilo. He didn't move. He stayed pressed against her, his round body curled protectively around her small frame. His purrs didn't stop, not for a second. If anything, they grew stronger, as if he was trying to shake the silence away, to keep her tethered to the world a little longer. But Lily didn't stir. Morning sunlight crept through the curtains, soft and golden. It touched Lily's face gently, almost reverently. And still, Pilo sat there, eyes wide, unmoving. He didn't eat. He didn't stretch. He didn't even blink much. Because Pilo wasn't just a cat anymore. He was a guardian left behind. A best friend with no one to chase butterflies with. A chubby, fluffy witness to a goodbye too big for his little feline heart. And if you had walked into that room, you might have thought it was unbearably sad. And you'd be right. But you might have also seen something else, a love so deep, so loyal, that it didn't need words, didn't need explanations. Just a girl and her cat, holding on to each other until the very last moment. Because sometimes, the strongest goodbyes are the quietest. And Pilo? He wasn't about to stop purring. Not now. Not ever. The house felt different now. Too quiet. Too still. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort you, it presses on your chest like an invisible weight. Lily's room, once a carnival of crayons, toys, and cookie crumbs, was tidy in a way that felt wrong. The crayons were neatly lined up, the toys placed back on shelves, and her little shoes sat by the corner untouched. If you've ever lived with a 5-year-old, you know, a clean room doesn't mean peace. It means something's missing. And in the middle of it all was Pilo. Our big, orange, blue-eyed fluffball still climbed onto Lily's bed every night. He'd curl up in the exact same spot she used to sleep, pressing his round belly against the blankets as if he could still feel her there. He purred, loud and stubborn, because he had promised. Maybe he thought if he purred long enough, loud enough, she'd hear him, wherever she was. Lily's parents tried. They gave him extra food, extra scratches behind the ear, even a new cat bed that looked like a tiny throne. But Pilo ignored it all. He wanted Lily's messy blanket, not some fancy cushion from the pet store. He wanted the soft weight of her tiny arm around him at night, not a toy mouse stuffed with catnip. Sometimes he wandered the house, tail dragging low, stopping at her favorite spots. The kitchen table, where she used to drop cereal pieces, accidentally, read, on purpose. The backyard, where she crowned him Captain Pilo, Flower Prince of the Dandelions. And the porch, where she once declared puddles were sky mirrors, and stomped in them until her boots filled with water. Now those places were quiet. Just Pilo and his memories. And let me tell you, if you think humans are good at sulking, you haven't seen a cat in mourning. Pilo had perfected the art. He'd sit by the window for hours, staring out at nothing with the tragic air of a Victorian poet. His sighs were loud enough to make you wonder if cats actually can sigh. Spoiler, yes, they can, and they will, especially if they want you to feel guilty about something you didn't do. At night, the silence in the house felt heavier. Lily's parents often sat together in the living room, holding hands, sometimes crying quietly. And always, Pilo was there, curled in the empty space where Lily should have been, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, as if he was guarding the memory of her. One evening, Lily's mom whispered, "I think he misses her just as much as we do." Her dad nodded, rubbing his tired eyes. Maybe even more. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Because Pilo wasn't just missing Lily, he was waiting. Waiting in the way only animals can, with a stubborn, loyal heart that refuses to believe the world has really changed. Every morning he'd trot to Lily's door, sit there, and wait. As if she might burst out any second, messy hair flying, yelling, "Pilo, come play." But the door never opened. Still, he waited. Because hope, even for cats, dies last. Now, don't get me wrong, Pilo wasn't all tragedy and gloom. He still had his moments of dramatic flair. Like the time he sat on the laundry basket, toppled it over, and then looked at Lily's mom like, "Yes, I meant to do that. Don't question my grief methods." Or when he snuck onto the kitchen counter, knocked over a glass of water, and then stared into the puddle as if searching for Lily in the reflection. Classic Pilo, equal parts heartbreaking and annoying. But the truth was simple, he was lonely. So every night, Pilo climbed onto Lily's bed. He'd curl up, tuck his paws under his chest, and purr into the quiet darkness. His purrs weren't just comfort anymore, they were an anthem, a stubborn reminder of a promise he made to a 5-year-old girl who believed in forever. And if you listened closely, really closely, you might almost believe those purrs reached beyond the silence. Maybe, just maybe, Lily could still hear them. Because sometimes love doesn't disappear. Sometimes it lingers, in the empty rooms, in the quiet nights, and in the rumbling purr of a chubby orange cat who refuses to forget. Time has this sneaky way of moving forward whether you like it or not. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Lily's house slowly learned how to breathe again. Her parents began smiling more often, though the smiles never quite reached their eyes. Friends visited, casseroles piled up in the fridge, because apparently food is the universal language for, "I'm sorry for your loss," and life, unfair as it was, kept going. But for Pilo, time moved differently. The chubby orange cat grew older, rounder, fluffier, because let's face it, once you've established yourself as the family's grief counselor, no one dares put you on a diet. He still waddled around the house with the grace of a furry bowling ball, but his eyes, those bright blue eyes, always carried a flicker of something else. Memory. Longing. A forever connection to a little girl with cookie crumbs on her cheeks. Every day, without fail, Pilo returned to Lily's favorite places. The kitchen chair she used to climb onto, badly. The backyard patch where dandelions once became flower crowns. And, most importantly, her bed. Even years later, that bed stayed in her room. Her parents couldn't bring themselves to pack it away, and honestly, Pilo wouldn't have allowed it anyway. He treated it like sacred ground. Each night, he curled up there, belly spreading across the blanket, purring into the silence. Loud, steady, stubborn, as if keeping his promise on repeat. And maybe you're thinking, okay, but he's just a cat. Cats forget stuff all the time. My cat can't even remember where the litter box is half the time. Sure, fair point. But this wasn't just memory, it was love. A kind of loyalty that refuses to fade, even when the world insists it should. Sometimes, Lily's mom would peek into the room and see him there, snoring like a broken accordion, and smile through her tears. Still with her, "Ha, Pilo," she'd whisper. And Pilo, without opening his eyes, would flick his tail in response. Which, in cat language, probably meant, obviously. Where else would I be? He carried her with him in every purr, every nap, every sigh. And in those quiet moments, the house didn't feel so empty. Because if you listened closely, really closely, you could almost hear Lily's laughter again. The way she used to squeal when Pilo flopped onto his back like a furry pancake. The way she'd giggle as she shoved a crayon into his paw, insisting he'd help color. The way she whispered, "bestest friend," as she drifted off to sleep. The years went by. Pilo grew older, slower. His jumps onto the bed turned into climbs, his naps got longer, his snores got louder, which everyone thought was scientifically impossible, yet here we are. But his loyalty never wavered. And maybe, just maybe, on certain nights, when the moonlight spilled into the room just right, you could swear you saw more than just Pilo on that bed. You could almost see a little girl curled up beside him, arm draped around his round belly, both of them fast asleep, dreaming the same dream. Because love like that doesn't vanish. It lingers. It echoes. It lives on in memory, in stories, and in the rumbling purr of a cat who refused to forget. So yes, Lily was gone. But she wasn't really gone. Not to Pilo. Not to her parents. Not to anyone who had ever witnessed their bond. Because sometimes the truest friendships, the ones made of rainstorms, cookie crumbs, and too loud purrs, never really end. They just change shape. And every time Pilo curled onto her bed, closed his blue eyes, and purred into the quiet night, he proved a simple truth. Best friends don't say goodbye. Not really. Pilo is growing up, but he never stops waiting for me. Every night, he curls up in my bed and purrs, just like I asked. Because true friendship doesn't end with goodbyes. It lives on, in memories, in love, and in the hearts of those we leave behind. So, every time you hear a cat's soft purr, maybe, just maybe, it's a reminder, true friends never really leave. Good night and sweet dreams.